So what if God was one of us? There's a story that I've read in a lot of different places and it's told a lot of different ways. But it fits so perfect to that song that I just had to start with it today. And it's about a monastery that's tucked in on a hillside. And it was known for a place to go for spiritual renewal. And young monks went there to study. They wanted to get in. There was a waiting line to get in there to study. People came from all over. And the chants and the prayers and the kindness and the love and the energy there, it just expanded people's consciousness, their hearts. But over the years, a change started to happen. And the monks that were there started to grow jealous and become petty, find fault with each other. And so it affected the energy there. And less people went to visit. And less new monks were drawn to go there. And the head of the monastery was concerned. And one day he was sitting with a friend of his, a very wise Jewish rabbi. And he said, I'm concerned that we're going to have to close the monastery. And the rabbi said, I've been wanting to tell you something. I've had a vision, and I just didn't know when was the right time to tell you. This is the time. In my vision, one of the monks in your ranks is the Messiah. And the abbot was just stunned. He returned to the monastery, called all the monks together, and he shared this with them. And they became quiet and they started looking in each other's faces. Who could it be? We've been finding fault and something wrong with each other. Isn't the Messiah supposed to be perfect? Is the Messiah here in disguise to test us? And so something happened. Their behavior toward each other started to change. And they became kinder and more compassionate and more loving. And so slowly, the monastery became filled with joy and smiles. And the chants and the prayers started to take on a new energy again. And it moved out, as energy does. And people would become attracted to the monastery again. New monks started to enter again. People started to visit again. And it grew and it prospered more than it ever had before. Emanating from it was this love, was this healing. All because they thought one of them was the Messiah. I love how things work out. I didn't look at today's daily word when I wrote the talk. But in Genesis 1:28, then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness." We are made in God's image. Unity has 5 principles. And they're guidelines, like the 4 agreements are guidelines. And the second one is that there is the essence of the divine in each one of us. A tiny piece of God stuff, in each one of us. God is not just one of us. God is all of us. When I get that, when I know that, then how can I not treat everyone with respect, with kindness? So today is the 3rd of the 4 agreements. Here's your test. What's the first one? Be impeccable with your word. Second one, don't take anything personally. Anybody bring your little signs in? It's not about me. It's all about me. How'd that go for you this week? Did it help? Angela's got it. Good. It's not about you, Karen. It's all about you. So today's talk is the third agreement. Don't make assumptions. Because when I make assumptions about anyone, I have forgotten that the essence of God is in that person. A very wise man once said, assumptions are the termites of relationships. Now, do you want to know who said that? Let's see who said that, Dan. The Fonz. And when you go on and put the word assumption quotes in, this one comes up more than any. Assumptions are the termites of relationships. Why? Because what do termites do? They eat at the foundation, don't they? They destroy from the inside out until the house crumbles. Assumptions will crumble our relationships. And life is all about relationships. We don't live on this island all by ourselves. It's about parent and child, brother and sister, friend, co-worker. We're in relation, even strangers on the road. We're in a relationship. The relationships are the framework that we live in. And there is where our greatest spiritual growth happens. It's where we get to see the negative thought patterns, the negative behavior, our anger, our resentment, our jealousy, all these things that block us from seeing that essence of God in the other person. It's when we're in here and we're hearing this, we get it, don't we? We get it. And then what happens? What happens when we go out that door? How fast do I forget? Because I do. Healthy relationships are created not by the absence of challenges. Challenges happen. Life happens. Healthy relationships happen by committing to being impeccable with our word, which means speaking our truth, allowing the other person to speak their truth, by committing to not taking anything personally. It's not about me, and it's all about me. These are powerful teachings. They're simple, but they're powerful. So here's what Don Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements, says about assumptions. If others tell us something, we make assumptions. If they don't tell us something, we make assumptions to fulfill our need to know and to replace the need to communicate. Even if we hear something and don't understand, we make assumptions about what it means and then believe the assumption. You see yourself in all this? I see me. We make all sorts of assumptions because we don't have the courage to ask. Here we are again, being in our truth, really being in our truth. We make assumptions about everything, don't we? I watched all the assumptions last night when we were kayaking. John's going to fall. John's not going to fall. John fell. It was a manatee's fault. But we do. We jump to conclusions about what someone's saying because instead of really hearing the words that are coming out of their mouth, what's going on? I'm thinking in my head about what they're saying. So I'm not hearing what they're telling me. We make exceptions about what people like and what they don't like, what someone else is thinking, what someone else is feeling, why someone is doing what they're doing. Can you find yourself in any of these? Don was a police officer, and he had had a really rough day at work. He had some really hard folks he had to deal with. He had mountains of paperwork. And he was headed home. He lived up in the country. He was heading up this windy road. And all he wanted to do, what do you want to do after a hard day of work? He wanted to get home. He wanted to relax. He wanted to kick back, put the TV on, watch the game. That's all he wanted to do. And he was just coming up to where the road went around this corner. And careening around that corner comes another car, comes over into his lane, just missed him. The window's open, and the driver yells out, "Pig." What assumption do you think he made? But before he could even think and turn around to chase him, in the middle of the road, Dan, was what? A pig. But do you see how fast we can jump into an assumption? So maybe what that person's telling you, and you're making an assumption of what it is, they're just trying to tell you their truth. There really is a pig in the road. The problem with making assumptions is that it's usually something negative, isn't it? I'll get to the positive ones later. But if someone isn't paying attention or listening, what do we assume? They're rude and disrespectful. If someone's quiet, what do we assume? They're mad? They want to be left alone? If someone offers feedback, what do I assume? Oh boy, going to be something negative about me. If I don't hear from a loved one who's gone away when I assume I'm supposed to, and I worry, and I assume the worst, you done that? Do you know? Really hear this. All worry is assumption. All worry is assumption because I'm assuming the worst. We assume that everyone sees life the way we do, that they think the way we do, they feel the way we feel, they judge the way we feel. But in reality, assumption is created by my ego's fears. That little me. And then I believe my assumption is right, of course. And then I'm going to defend it no matter what, make the other person wrong. Been there? I have. We had that happen this morning. I'm not even going to look up for that one. So this week, I asked a few people here, just tell me some of the assumptions you make. You know, I kind of want to have a feel of what assumptions. And just about all of them came back with driving assumptions about driving. That's the easy place to go. So Bill's 5-year-old son fell off his bike. And Bill went over to see to him, and he had blood gushing out of his head, and Bill picked him up and put him in the car, and he's headed for the hospital as fast as he can go, and he passes a slow-moving driver. And as he goes by, the guy yells at him, gives him the finger, and Bill goes, gee, I wish I could explain to him what was happening and why I have to go fast. So think about it. Think about all the drivers you've assumed the worst about. But you know what? Maybe somebody just had a bad day at work. Maybe they were worried about losing their job. Maybe they just had heard about the foreclosure on their home, or their partner was leaving them. Or maybe they had a sick child in the car and were distracted. When I lived in Santa Barbara, California, in August there's Fiesta Week, and it's party all week long. So the first night of Fiesta, I said, you know what? I'm going to stay home tonight and stay out of trouble. And where my girlfriend and I lived was a little side street, so we had to park our cars on the main street. So I parked my car on the main street. We're sound asleep. In the middle of the night, we hear this crash that woke us up a block away. And the first thing that went through our head was your car. And we went running up in our PJs, and sure enough, someone had hit the back of my car, totaled it. And the police came and they wanted to know if I wanted to press charges. Well, here's a grandma with her little 3-year-old burning up with a fever, whose mom was not able to take care of her the way she should. So the grandmother is trying to take her to the hospital. The first hospital she went to, the hospital wouldn't accept the child because the grandmother wasn't the legal guardian. So she was going to the hospital right down the road from where we lived, and she realized she'd missed it. She turned her head, and she hit my car. Now, I could have made all kinds of assumptions around that, but the truth was it wasn't anybody's fault. And the main thing was, let's get this child to the hospital. So assumptions can come at us really fast unless we really stop and we really get present. We don't know. We don't know what's going on inside of someone else's mind, what's happening in their life. One assumption can lead to another, then we lash out, we judge, we blame, and we assume the other person's going to judge and blame us back. We make up stories, and we believe they're true, don't we? And what are we doing? We're creating this great big drama inside our head. And where we make the most assumptions is in our closest relationships. Because we assume, because we're so close, that the other person knows what I need, and I don't have to tell them. We assume they should already know what I want, so I don't have to actually ask for it. We assume that they can read our minds. I've been there, guys. I've done all this in my relationships. We assume they know what I expect from them. I assume they'll do it without my asking. And then I get upset when they don't. I assume that their actions and inactions are done intentionally to hurt me. I've had 2 marriages, many relationships, and I can see me in all of these. Before I knew about the 4 agreements, we can assume we are right to a point where it destroys our relationship in order to defend our position. Assumptions really are the termites of relationships. Because And don't, we don't want to, I don't want to do in Unity Church what I got done to me in a other church I used to go to. Don't let yourself go into guilt. This is not about guilt. This is about awareness. Where can I catch myself? Where can I change? Where can I be a better person? Because what's happened is, we're talking about the 4 agreements. We have unconsciously made an agreement somewhere along our life that it is not safe to ask questions. That the people that love us should know what we want and how we feel. And they don't. We don't. We can't be inside each other's heads. And what happens is usually the other person reacts with a flight or fight response. They either attack or blame, or they retreat, they pull away. So we have a choice in all our relationships to assume and blame, or to tell the truth about our feelings and needs. We're back to be impeccable with our word and don't take anything personally. You see how these all tie in together? How they all connect? And I said I'd get back to positive assumptions. We don't want to make positive assumptions either. Positive assumptions are not making positive affirmations. Positive assumptions are expectations. And they keep me from being present to what is, to what's actually happening. So, how do we stop making our assumptions? Have to get that how-to in. First of all, just stop thinking. Try to just stop thinking. Because As long as you're thinking, you're trying to explain inside your head. You know, you're making this story up inside your head. Instead, ask questions. When there's a difference, ask. That's why we have the compassionate communication here twice a month. Keep asking until there's a clarity, until you know the truth. And once you know the truth, you don't have to make an assumption, right? Then you deal with the truth. Be impeccable with your word, which means communicate honestly, clearly. Don't take anything personally. Avoid misunderstanding. And see things the way they are, not the way we assume they should be. Think about this. All the energy I use in making my assumptions, what if I took all that energy and used it in creating the life I really wanted? We have that power. We have that power. Hear that. So we're talking about assumptions, and we know we all do it. Think about the energy you're putting into that assumption. And when it keeps jumping and going bigger and bigger and bigger, think of where your energy is going. Pull it back. Pull it back. Pull it back within. Use that energy to connect to spirit. Use that energy to know who you are. Use that energy to connect to the power that you are. Use that energy to connect to that little spark of divinity in you. When you can connect to that spot, your life is going to change. You'll step into a new power. So this week, make the third agreement. And start by looking at your assumptions. Don't just walk out of here and forget this. Think about it on your way home. Mull it over. Go for a walk. When you're not doing it, when you're doing the dishes, think about how you make assumptions. And then ask yourself, what am I assuming about myself? What am I assuming about someone else? This week, don't make assumptions. Change your way of communicating. Change your relationships. Because God is not one of us. God is all of us. God bless you.